Surviving Flight 180 was a plane crash experience I would never forget. It was indeed a death-defying experience. If you had asked me that morning what death smells like, I might have just said burnt paper. But now I know better. It smells like hot metal and spilled coffee. Like hydraulic oil. Like fear. Real, thick fear, coating your throat like dust in an old church. I never imagined my name would be on a manifest destined for disaster. Not when I had spent years reporting on the fallouts of other people's tragedies. But life, or maybe fate, has a wicked sense of irony. I was seated in 12A, window side. Not for the view. I liked the control it gave me, an illusion maybe, but comforting. I was heading back to London after 3 months in Nigeria chasing corruption, particularly a lead about aircraft maintenance fraud. I had not cracked it yet, but I had seen just enough to know something was festering under the surface. I didn't expect that something could nearly kill me. Would you like orange juice or water? The flight attendant, Nia, her name tag read, smiled with a kind of practiced ease. Her eyeliner was a little smudged. I noticed that kind of thing. Water, please, I replied, pulling out my notebook. She handed it over, and I caught a glimpse of trembling fingers before she quickly tucked them behind her tray. I almost asked if she was okay, but didn't. Not yet. Sam Okoro plopped into 12B with the chaotic grace of someone who runs on caffeine and ambition. Sorry, he muttered, lifting a sleek drone case onto the overhead bin. You're in tech, I guessed aloud. His brows shot up. Is that obvious? I shrugged. You have the look. Plus, that's not a lunchbox. We chuckled. He looked younger than me, though only by a few years. There was something honest in his eyes. It made me uncomfortable, somehow. We took off smoothly, too smoothly, in hindsight. An hour in, the lights dimmed. I had just begun sketching notes for my next article. The words systemic oversight stared back at me when something shifted. Not turbulence, something deeper. The kind that makes your inner ear throb before your brain registers the change. The plane dropped, just a little, but enough to cause a ripple of tension through the cabin. Then, a sound. A hard, metallic clank, like a wrench being dropped onto concrete. I looked up. So did Sam. So did Nia, who was walking past and froze mid-stride. I remember exactly what she whispered under her breath. Oh no. The announcement came 30 seconds later. Ladies and gentlemen, a voice crackled, too calm, too slow, we are experiencing minor technical difficulties and will be leveling off shortly. Please remain seated. Minor technical difficulties. A man behind me started praying in Yoruba. Sam gripped the armrest. Did you hear that clank? Yeah, I said, grabbing my notebook instinctively, like it was a life raft. That was not turbulence. I don't know why I said it out loud. Maybe I needed someone else to say it back. That's when the oxygen masks dropped. Panic is a living thing. It breathes. It multiplies. The air was suddenly thinner, like the atmosphere knew something we didn't. People screamed. Children cried. One woman fainted. I tore the mask over my face, hands shaking, every inch of me shouting, "This is real, this is real, this is real." I turned to Sam. He had not put on his mask. Sam! I yelled, reaching across. I yanked it over his mouth. His eyes met mine with a flicker of something like gratitude and fear. I should have been praying. Instead, I was thinking, this is exactly the kind of thing I write about. Ironic. Cruel. Familiar. 3 years ago. My brother's name was on the evening news. Flight 742. Mechanical failure. 102 dead. He was seated at 18F. He never had a chance. They never printed his photo. Never explained the engine that had failed inspection twice. I promised I would dig. I promised someone would pay. Now here I was, 30,000 feet up, on a plane with a similar scent of neglect. The captain's voice came again, this time shaking. This is Captain Haruna Malik. We are experiencing a critical loss of hydraulic power. We are diverting toward a safe landing site near the edge of the Sahara. We advise you to brace. Brace. Like a final instruction from God. There is something you don't realize about screaming until you are surrounded by it. It becomes background noise. As the aeroplane shook violently, there was gut-churning, wing-wobbling turbulence that felt like being trapped in a dying animal. I could barely process anything. Not the cries, not the shouting, not even my own breathing through the mask. I could only hear one sound clearly. The drone of the failing engines. The left wing stuttered. A series of sparks flew across the window beside me. Sam reached over and grabbed my hand without asking. "We are going down," he said, too calmly. "No," I said, instinctively. "We are not." But I didn't believe myself. Across the aisle, Nia struggled to assist an elderly woman whose oxygen mask had tangled in her earrings. Her hands were trembling, but she worked through the panic with an intensity that reminded me of medics I had interviewed in conflict zones. Someone screamed, "Why aren't we leveling out?" I reached into my bag for my notebook. Again. Why? I don't know. Maybe because I didn't want my final thoughts to die with me. I wrote one sentence. If I survive this, I will tell everything. A year ago. I was in Port Harcourt, digging through aircraft service logs at an aviation contractor's office. There were patterns, skipped checks, forged signatures, and reports that were lost. One name kept coming up. Skyfleet Engineering. The same firm that had serviced Flight 742, the one my brother died on. And now? Skyfleet had recently won a quiet contract to retrofit emergency systems on the very aircraft I was flying in, Flight 180. The descent was sudden. Too fast. A drop that made my stomach twist into my throat. The captain's voice returned, raspy, human now. "No protocol. We have lost full pressure in the main line." I repeat, full pressure. Manual override engaged. Emergency landing protocol activated. Please, brace. That's when I realized he was scared too. Sam was muttering a prayer under his breath. I looked back and saw a boy, couldn't be older than 10, clutching his toy aeroplane like a talisman. I felt something then. Not terror. Not regret. A weird calm. Almost like I had already accepted the outcome. But fate wasn't finished with us yet. The sound was unbearable. The aeroplane slammed into the sand like a stone skipping across water, metal screeching, wings splitting, and overhead compartments bursting open. My seatbelt strained. I tasted blood, I bit my tongue. Everything blurred, flipped, and twisted. Then black. Silence. Then screaming. When I opened my eyes, there was smoke. Thick, acrid smoke that clawed at my lungs. I had lost my glasses. Sam was groaning beside me, a gash over his eyebrow. I reached for him. "We made it," I said. It came out more like a question. Half the plane was tilted in sand, one engine still sputtering fire. The emergency lights flickered. Some people were still buckled in. Others weren't moving. I felt my journalist instinct kick in, but it was drowned by the overwhelming human one: survive. Help. Move. Nia appeared through the haze, limping, her uniform torn. Exit rows jammed, she said hoarsely. We need to use the rear slide. The rear? That meant passing through fire. Sam stood, wobbling. I have got a knife in my drone kit. We can cut through belts. Good, I said. Get to the children in the back. I'll help Nia. He nodded once and disappeared into the smoke. We moved like ghosts through a dream. There was so much screaming. So much fire. I pulled a woman free from a broken seatbelt, then an old man from under a suitcase. We didn't think. We moved. We reacted. The training none of us had kicked in like instinct. 3 years ago. I watched my brother get buried in a coffin they never opened. Closed casket, they said. It's better this way. I remember my father crying beside me. Not loudly. Just quietly. With dignity. A dignity I swore I would someday match. I think I finally did, right there in the smoke. By the time we reached the rear exit, flames had lit through half the cabin. I turned back one last time, out of instinct, and saw someone unconscious in row 21. A child. I ran back. My foot caught something sharp. Pain. Ignore it. The child must have been the same boy, he was breathing but limp. I slung him over my shoulder, coughing and choking. Behind me, the roof gave a creak. A groan. Then it started to collapse. I dived. We tumbled out of the chute just as the cabin imploded behind us. We made it outside. Sand. Silence. Stars above. We were in the desert. Middle of nowhere. A half-burnt shell of an aeroplane smoking behind us. Around me, survivors huddled. Crying. Hugging. Silent. Sam limped toward me, hands bloody, but alive. Nia followed, coughing hard, her eyes wide with disbelief. I laid the boy down beside his mother, who wailed and kissed me over and over in Hausa. I just nodded. I couldn't speak. Some months ago. My editor told me, Aisha, there are 2 kinds of journalists. Those who report the story and those who become it. I think I just became it. They say trauma comes in waves. First, it knocks the air out of you. Then it gives you time to think. Then it comes again and again, until you no longer know how to stand. We were 26 survivors. Out of 143. The sun hadn't yet risen, but its echo was already warming the edges of the dunes. My throat burned. My leg was bleeding. My journal was half-singed. And yet, I had never felt more alive. Nia took charge. I watched her direct passengers into a circle, checking pulses and administering the last few first aid kits the plane had left behind. She was limping badly. But she didn't stop. You, she said to Sam, help the older ones build shade before the sun climbs. And me? I asked. She looked at me, as if unsure what I could offer. Just, stay alert, she said. Keep people awake. She didn't mean it rudely. But it stung. We worked in silence. The sand had already begun to burn through the soles of our shoes. I tied fabric around my feet using a torn scarf. The same scarf my mother had given me before I left for Lagos. Safe journeys, Aisha, she had said. And don't chase death like your brother did. Turns out, it didn't need chasing. It had been chasing me. As dawn broke, I found a spot on a dune, pulled out my mostly scorched journal, and started writing. 6 o'clock hours. The plane's GPS was fried. We are 3 hours from the last radio contact. No sign of rescue. Sam is showing signs of shock. Nia has taken a leadership role, despite minor injuries. Suspected hydraulic failure. Possible tampering? The cabin smelt like ozone before the drop. Must investigate Skyfleet Engineering's involvement. I paused. And then I wrote what I hadn't dared speak aloud. This may not have been an accident. Port Harcourt. 2 weeks ago. A whistleblower had slipped me a printed maintenance report in a cafe off Agbunali Road. It's not just negligence, he said, eyes scanning the street. It's deliberate. Parts reused. Safety thresholds ignored. Pilots not informed. He had left a name on the folder. Captain Haruna Malik. The very man flying Flight 180. Back in the desert, I spotted Captain Malik slumped beside a broken crate. His uniform was scorched. He was alive, barely. I knelt beside him. He blinked up at me. Journalist. You remember me? From the gate, he whispered. You were writing. He coughed, wet and sharp. Blood on his lips. Captain, I said urgently, did you report any faults before takeoff? He closed his eyes. They said the hydraulics were fine. New valves. Approved by Skyfleet. But they weren't, were they? No, he breathed. Not even certified. Why fly? He opened his eyes again, barely. Because they said if I didn't, they would fire my daughter from her med school. My heart stopped. They had leverage on you. On all of us, he rasped. And then he passed out. I was shaking as I stood. Skyfleet didn't just cut corners, they buried people under them. And now they had nearly buried all of us. I scribbled everything down. This story was no longer a headline. It was a reckoning. By midday, the heat became unbearable. 2 people had passed out. One man, a diabetic, was rapidly declining. We had no insulin. Sam had taken apart his drone to try and boost a signal. It wasn't working. The solar flare had fried most of the satellite bands. I watched him pace, then finally slammed the casing into the sand. We are going to die out here, he muttered. No, I said, standing. How can you be sure? Because I still have something to publish. He looked at me like I was insane. Maybe I was. At age 17. My first published article. My headline, Local Girl Sues Mayor Over Unsafe School Conditions. I won a scholarship the same week. My father clipped it, laminated it, and carried it in his wallet until the day he died. When the authorities failed to return my brother's remains, I laminated his death certificate. Now I had a third thing worth laminating. The truth about Flight 180. Around 3 p.m., we saw the black dot in the sky. One of the survivors screamed. Another dropped to their knees in gratitude. It was a patrol drone, Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority. We waved. We cried. Sam lit a makeshift flare from his drone battery. They saw us. Help was coming. By nightfall, 2 helicopters touched down near the crash site. Rescue workers swarmed the area. Survivors were loaded onto stretchers. Bottled water was handed out like gold. I let them bandage my foot, but refused the sedative they offered. I needed my mind to be sharp. "Are you Aisha Bello?" one of the responders asked me. "Yes." "You are wanted at command. There is someone asking for you." I followed them across the sand, still trembling, and came face to face with a man I never thought I would see again. Joseph Iadil. My ex-editor. My ex-lover. The first man to believe I had a voice worth printing. He stood with his arms crossed, wearing the press vest of a foreign media outlet. "I figured you had survived," he said. "I figured you would publish me if I didn't." I responded. He nodded toward my scorched journal. "You still write like a lunatic?" "Only when I'm on fire." That night, while the others were flown to safety, I stayed behind with the investigative team and 2 rescue officers. I had names to give, evidence to hand over, and a promise to keep. I used to think the crash would be the most traumatic part. But I was wrong. The most terrifying thing was what came after. We landed in Abuja under tight security. The survivors were separated into medical triage units. Press were held behind barriers. The government issued a carefully worded statement. An unforeseen mechanical failure. Investigations ongoing. We ask for patience and privacy for the affected families. A lie wrapped in sympathy. I asked to speak with Nia first. She was resting in a sterile white hospital room, for in her arm, foot elevated. "They're spinning it already," I said. "Blaming it on tech error." She didn't answer right away. She stared out the window, then finally whispered. "I heard them talking, Aisha. On the emergency radio. Even before the rescue. Someone told the captain to keep quiet if he survived." My skin went cold. "Who?" I asked. She shook her head. "They never gave names. But one of them said, 'The media's already on our side.'" I exhaled slowly. That's what scares me. 3 years ago. Joseph and I. We had just broken the Sky Metro train scandal, defective rail brakes on newly imported locomotives. We sat on a balcony, champagne between us, half a dozen legal threats in our inbox. "You scared?" I asked. He laughed. "Only of losing my job. Not my life." I remember thinking, I'm scared of both. And I was. Still am. By the 3rd day after the crash, I had everything I needed to publish. The tampered Skyfleet service records. My interview with Captain Malik. Survivor testimonies. And a working theory. Flight 180 didn't crash by accident. It was the result of years of corruption, negligence, and silencing of dissent. But I also had a choice. Because that same day, I got a call. From someone I never expected. The Minister of Aviation. We met in a secure conference room in a hotel no journalist was supposed to know about. She looked tired. Her hands trembled slightly as she poured herself tea. "I have read your drafts, Aisha." Of course she had. My email had been hacked months ago. She continued, "If you publish this now, as is, you'll collapse not just Skyfleet, but every airline in partnership with them. Including National Defense." I folded my arms. So, we're not ready. We need time to create a transition plan. To mitigate fallout. To protect national security. You mean to protect your donors? She flinched. "I'm offering you a compromise," she said. Hold the story for 90 days. We begin phased termination of Skyfleet's contracts. We introduce reforms. Quietly. You still get the scoop, but in a way that saves lives, not crashes economies. I stared at her. Your brother's name is on the original complaint, she added softly. He tried to warn us before Flight 742. We didn't listen. Help us fix it right this time. I stood slowly. And walked out. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my hotel room with my laptop open, the entire article laid out like a confession. It was perfect. Timed. Verified. Brutal. But a whisper kept repeating in my head, don't burn the house, unless you're ready to live in the ruins. I closed the laptop. Called Sam. I need your help. We met at dawn. Sam looked 10 years older in 3 days. But his eyes lit up when I told him my plan. If we can get one former employee of Skyfleet on record, it's over. No delay. No PR. Just truth. He smiled bitterly. You want the whistleblower. Exactly. I recurred. Port Harcourt again. The man who gave me the files, I now remembered, he had a stutter. Wore a green cap. And his email had bounced the last time I tried to reach him. But I knew one place he still visited. His sister's pharmacy. We flew to Port Harcourt under fake names. It was dangerous, reckless, and it worked. She recognized me instantly. He's been hiding, she said. Ever since he heard you were on Flight 180, he thought it was his fault. He saved us, I said. I need him to help save the next plane too. She gave me an address. We found him living in a one-room shack off Elenwo Road. He opened the door, saw me, and cried. I don't want to die, he said. You won't, I whispered. Not if you tell the truth. He recorded the video in one take. In it, he named names. Described bribes. Showed copies of memos signed by Skyfleet executives that approved the use of fake hydraulic parts. At the end, he looked directly into the camera. I couldn't save the people on Flight 742. But I helped someone who saved the people on Flight 180. This is the price of silence. I uploaded the file. Encrypted the article. Scheduled it to go live on every major news platform using syndication. 3 days later, it went public. The story took over social media in under 4 hours. Hashtag Flight 180 Truth trended globally. Skyfleet stock dropped 68% in one day. Aviation contracts were frozen. The Minister of Aviation stepped down voluntarily. But not everyone was celebrating. I got a call from Joseph. They have frozen my account, he said. Said I leaked classified information. You didn't, I said. I did. I know, he whispered. But they're not after you, Aisha. Not yet. They're going to make an example of me instead. I sat down. I'm sorry, I whispered. Don't be. Just, don't stop. And then the line went dead. Before his death. My father once told me, every truth-teller becomes a target. But a real one? Becomes a mirror. People don't shoot mirrors, they break them, then realize they were only scared of their reflection. I didn't understand him then. Now I did. I thought exposing the truth would bring peace. Instead, it brought silence. Not the comforting kind, like soft rain after chaos. No. This was the silence of empty inboxes. Of friends too afraid to call. Of editors who claimed they never knew me. Of a family that didn't know how to say, "We're proud," without also meaning, "We're scared." It had been 2 weeks since I hit publish. Since the world met the truth behind Flight 180. The Ministry of Aviation collapsed like a bad scaffolding. Skyfleet was being sued by 5 countries. The survivors were being hounded by networks. And I was holed up in a small apartment in Lagos, one street away from the sea, wondering what part of me had died with that plane and which part had been born from its ashes. The day after my brother's funeral. My mother sat beside me, breaking roasted peanuts into 2 before eating. She always did that when she was grieving. "He was always chasing something," she whispered. "A storm. A purpose. I think it killed him." "No," I said softly. "It was silence that killed him." Sam visited one afternoon. He brought pineapple juice and 2 old drone propellers. "Souvenirs," he said. I laughed. For the first time in days. He told me Nia had accepted a scholarship to study crisis medicine abroad. Said Joseph had been cleared of all charges, thanks to a surprise leak from an anonymous civil servant who dropped timestamps proving his innocence. "You think it was the minister?" I asked. Sam shrugged. "Maybe guilt has a heartbeat." I spent the next few weeks visiting survivors. Some wanted to forget. Some wanted to sue. One wanted to turn her near-death experience into a faith-based podcast. And then there was Captain Malik. He didn't survive. His heart failed 2 days after the rescue. They buried him quietly. No official honors. No statements. His daughter stood alone at the gravesite, a rolled-up medical school acceptance letter in her trembling hand. I sent her my journal later that week, typed up, printed, and bound. With a note. "Your father saved us. The world should know what kind of man he was. And now, they will." My first day at the university newspaper. The editor asked me, "What kind of journalist do you want to be?" I didn't answer. Now, I think I can. Today. The memoir is finished. 20,000 words. Every one soaked in fear, truth, and survival. It ends like this. I survived Flight 180. Not because I was lucky. Not because I prayed harder. But because someone refused to be silent. And now it's my turn to do the same. I didn't get a book deal. I didn't win a peace prize. What I got was better. I got an inbox flooded with messages from whistleblowers, survivors, pilots, engineers, and even cleaners, people ready to talk. And one night, I received a single email and signed. "Because of you, I didn't let them install the fake parts on Flight 243. It flew safely. No incident. Thank you." I sat there staring at the screen, tears in my eyes. Not all heroes wear press badges. Some just refuse to shut up. Now, every year on the crash anniversary, I go back to the desert. Not all the way, just close enough to see the red-orange dunes swallow the sun. And I whisper 3 names. My brother. Captain Malik. And the version of me that once thought survival was the end of the story. It's not. It's the beginning. Here is my journal excerpt. I still hear the impact in my dreams. But I've learnt something. The crash didn't break me. It revealed me. And some truths? They fly louder than silence. 2 years later, an aviation watchdog committee was formed across West Africa, spearheaded by civilians, survivors, and whistleblowers. It's called Project 180. their motto? What survives a crash should change the sky. And me? I still write. Still walk with a limp some mornings. Still carry a flame inside me that no one can put out. Because the truth isn't just something we survive. It's something we fight to live by. Even if it kills us. Especially if it doesn't. And that, my friend, is the end of today's unforgettable story. If it moved you, made you think, or left you speechless, then you're exactly where you belong. Every week, we bring you raw, real, and riveting stories, betrayal, survival, secrets, heartbreak, redemption, and everything in between. So if you crave true-life drama, mind-blowing plot twists, and stories that stick with you, don't just watch, join the family. Tap that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and be the first to catch the next jaw-dropping tale. Drop your thoughts in the comments, I read every one. Share your theories, your feelings, or just let me know you were here. Until next time, stay curious, stay bold, and never stop seeking the story behind the story. This is Platinum Stories, signing off.